Right guys, well I'm here at London Victoria Station. Do you know what, it's been probably 15 years since I was here last, but I'm taking a train today all the way down to Brighton. I'm looking forward to this because I haven't been to the seaside for months and months now. So why don't you come with me for this trip with Southern Trains, and I will see you when I get there. Cheers for now. Right, so here's an interesting fact. I must admit I wasn't aware of this until I looked it up. London Victoria Station is actually named after the nearby street, and not the Queen, of the same name. Now, it's a Grade 2 listed building and is the second busiest station in the UK. Now, who would like to comment below on where the busiest one is? As you can see, it's quite a large concourse area, and it has the usual food outlets and a very patriotic display of Union Jacks hanging from the roof for some reason. Now, in normal times the station sees around 75 million passengers a year, but as you can see it was still pretty quiet in early 2022. And there are two separate mainline termini here. The east side, platforms 1 to 8, which is used by South Eastern trains towards Kent, and the west side, platforms 9 to 19, used by Southern and the Gatwick Express. I was a bit early at this point, so I went for a walk around the station, and when I returned about 45 minutes later I discovered that the train I was supposed to be catching, which was the 11:15 to Hove, didn't appear to be on the departures board. Right, so the Southern train service I was intending to get was the 11:15 from London Victoria. Unfortunately that's been cancelled. But the guy at the information desk said I can get on another Southern train. So I'm on the 11:04 to Portsmouth Harbour, I think it goes. But I've got to change at East Croydon. And when I've done that, I'll just wait for another train which will take me all the way down to Brighton, hopefully. So yeah, no problem at all. I'll see you a little bit later on. So this train did leave on time, and we headed south out to Victoria Station. There's some great views here as we cross the River Thames, looking towards central London in the distance, with Battersea Power Station in the foreground. And talking of which, by the way, I had a fantastic Uber boat ride up here the day before. I've popped a link to that video just here if you're interested. This service on a Class 377 electric multiple unit was pretty quiet. As I was getting off at East Croydon, I didn't think it was really worth looking at the interior at this point, but I'd saved that for the main part of the journey, and that was likely to be by the same class of train anyway. Now, we stopped at Clapham Junction on the way, which, despite its name, isn't actually situated in Clapham. Interesting fact number 2 there. Each day, more than 2,000 trains pass through Clapham Junction, and that's more than any other station in Europe, believe it or not. Around half of them actually stop there too. After alighting at East Croydon, I had time to buy the world's biggest pain à raison and a coffee before the arrival of my train, the 11:33 to Littlehampton, I think it was anyway. So it wouldn't be going all the way to Brighton as I originally thought. I would have to get off yet again at Hove. Anyway, it was what it was, so I boarded the train and settled in for what would be the longest section of the journey. The carriage was laid out in a 2-2 configuration with a mixture of table and airline seats, as expected really. I thought legroom was a bit tight in the table seats if somebody was sitting opposite you, for example. Floor was clean enough though. There are adjustable armrests on the seating and the padding was a little thin, I thought. A bit of rubbish down the side of the seat, but to be honest that could have been dropped by a passenger on an earlier service, so I'm not going to pull them up on the cleaning for this one. The table was large enough once I'd cleared most of my mess off it. And above the seats on both sides were reasonably sized luggage racks with integrated personal reading lights. There was storage for larger items of luggage near the doors to the carriage. And looking at the airline seats specifically, each one had a drop-down seatback table, which was clean enough. Personally, I thought there was a little bit more legroom on these seats as well. There were first class sections on this train, which weren't much different to standard really. And first class was not, by the way, declassified for this journey. One couple thought they'd try and were subsequently sent on their way by the guard, which I quite enjoyed, I must admit. Wi-Fi worked well enough, loading up social media pictures fairly quickly. Disappointingly, there were no power outlets, apart from this one, which was presumably used by the cleaners. So yeah, overall I would probably describe the carriage as okay, but a bit basic. Anyway, let's go and do the loo review and we'll see how that fares, shall we? Okay, well the tiny toilet was locked with this latch here, and next to that was some toilet tissue and a handle to grab onto if you were sitting down. Now surprisingly in this tiny space there were baby changing facilities available, and the table, which was also a place for attaching loads of stickers by the looks of it, were folded down to reveal a clean surface, but unfortunately no babies. And I was just about able to turn round enough to face the mirror. Underneath that was the sink with integrated soap, water and air dryer provision. The soap worked eventually, as did the water and the dryer, so no issues there. More signs here, and there was an emergency alarm button around about chest height. There wasn't one on the floor, but to be honest you'd have a job trying to fall down in this toilet anyway due to its small size. There was a little bit under the sink, and yeah, that was about it. Clean but small, really small. So we were making good progress south now, and actually I was surprised at how many tunnels, bridges and cuttings there were on this line. But I guess that's largely due to the undulating geology of the southeast. Please comment below if you know more about this. I'm not that familiar with the area to be honest, but I would be really interested to know. Now what I was familiar with was the price I paid for this one-way journey, which was a grand total of £5. Now at the time I thought that was pretty good value for money compared to the other option, which was a Thameslink train from London Bridge I think, priced at £19.60. Now I booked the fare about 3.5 weeks in advance, so although it did turn out to be a bit of a hassle having to change trains twice, for the money I couldn't really complain too much, could I? Well, after about an hour and a half, the train finally trundled into Hove, which was quite a nice station, ruined by this rather dull looking underpass which I had to use to get on the right platform to wait for the next and final train for the short journey down to Brighton. I think I must have been in a bit of a mood by this point, as it was just like another round of waiting about on the platform. But then I think, the old adage, you get what you pay for, and can probably be rightly directed at me by this stage of the journey, to be fair. I've got to say, this is a bit of a faff today. London to Brighton I thought was going to be easy. Nice quick train down there, and have a little look around and then come back. But no, I'm at Hove and I'm waiting for my third train of this particular trip, which will take me down to Brighton finally. So it's quite a nice station actually, and the weather's nice, so I'll get there eventually, and I'll speak to you again once I get off the train at Brighton. So I found myself stood staring at James Blunt for what seemed like an interminably long time, and until a fairly battered looking class 313 rolled in. It was pretty grim on the inside, with horrible seats, but yeah, it was tolerable for the 5 minutes or so it would take to complete this journey. Oh, and finally, at long last, we'd arrived at Brighton, which I think is a lovely station with a fantastic roof. And it was under which, with some relief, believe me, I was able to pause for a moment and summarise the journey. Okay guys, I finally made it to Brighton 3 trains later. You wouldn't think it'd be such a faff really, would you, from London to Brighton? But we got there in the end. Southern trains, yeah, what do you think of Southern trains? Let me know in the comments below. My impression really was clean, but fairly basic. But we got there in the end, and I'm off now to write some postcards to some of my followers on Ko-fi. If you'd like a postcard, why don't you head over to that webpage, and links below by the way, and buy one from the shop. That would be much appreciated. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I shall see you on another adventure soon, and as always guys, cheers for now.